So I just wanted to record this quick intro video because I wanted to introduce it. I was a little bit nervous about releasing this video because it's around a very controversial topic. People know, obviously we all know someone who's had cancer before. Maybe that's family, maybe it's close friends, whatever that might be for you. Maybe it's yourself, I don't know. And I was nervous because for me it may have the effect of scraping on what people believe as to be true, and also that maybe you think that me or somebody else is not an expert in the subject, so what qualifies us to speak about it or to share a video like this. So, and I just want to set it up to say that this is about sharing an experience. It's not by any means a way of that you should or shouldn't make decisions about what you're choosing to do if you're someone who actually maybe has cancer, or you're recommending that another member of the family to go down a similar route. What I want to say is that the whole point of Imagine Radiance, this channel, is to give you an alternative option. It's to say that there is no one way. There's a way that works for you, and you're the one that needs to decide what that is, what that route map is for you, and you're the one who has to decide it and then take the necessary actions to fulfill on getting the results that you're wanting to accomplish through taking on whatever that is. And it's also to say that there's expertise out there, and I'm not saying that you should not listen to experts. Experts are a massive help, but what I am saying is that you're the one that gets to make the decision about how it gets to be, the way that you're taking, and that's what we're doing here. So we're just providing you with a story, with someone who's been there, someone who's had an experience and they've taken actions according to what they believe in, and that it's really there as an inspiration for you, as an education to say that there is more than one choice. Okay, so I hope you find it valuable, and please comment below if you're in agreement with it, if you're not, if you have anything that's kind of comes up in your mind, be expressive about it. Like, we're okay, good, bad feedback, whatever comes up out of watching this. But what I would invite you to do is to have an open mind. That's my only request. So thank you for listening, and welcome to the interview. Enjoy. I'm Ben Nash, this is my vlog, and here I'm interviewing Jem Ayres. Jem, welcome, how are you doing?
Thank you, I'm doing great.
So basically I wanted to interview Jem because I went to a talk and she gave an amazingly inspirational talk about sharing some of your journey and what you've been up to and some of the challenges that you have. These are ultimately things that hopefully not everyone will come up against. You've had cancer in the past, and essentially you took it upon yourself to say, right, I'm responsible now for my body and what I'm doing and how I'm looking after myself. So tell us a little bit about your story.
I was diagnosed with advanced melanoma, so I had tumours found in my brain and my lymph node in my armpit and my lung, but it was a skin cancer, so it travelled through the blood and created secondary tumours. And I was told that all the best option they could offer me was treatment called immunotherapy, which could only get me so far. The best outcome would be to stabilise me, so it was palliative care, so it was a terminal situation. And 7 months after the treatment, basically, I had clear scan results. So I took it upon myself, took absolute responsibility when I recognised that all that they could offer me was a treatment that could only make me stable at best. That wasn't good enough for me. So I knew I wanted to use all the tools I had to try and make sure that I could fast track my own healing. So I looked at different ways to boosting my immune system, working with my liver, working with my gut, and that also led me to detoxing, and not only my body but my whole life. So I had to look at all aspects of my life and where I could cut out the things that were no longer serving me.
Tell me a little bit about the situation that you think, like just from your experience, that maybe have contributed to that in the first place.
So through my research, I've discovered that actually a massive situation around cancer is to do with toxicity in the body. And a load of that is caused by stress. And we can eat organic and we can do what we can to put non-toxic things into our body, but stress is still created by our work, our lives and the environment that we live in. So before cancer, I'd been an entrepreneur, I'd been a businesswoman running a one-woman business and employing other people to work with me, and that had been for 6 years, and I was quite stressed. I was an overachiever, I was incredibly successful, but it got to a point where I was just on the edge of burnout and I didn't know how to release any responsibility for my work. I couldn't let go. I was micromanaging because it felt like it was my responsibility to make sure that the business was smooth and streamlined, and that if customers were unhappy, ultimately it was always going to be on my shoulders. So I was really trying to juggle all these balls in the air, and I wasn't looking after myself. There wasn't enough self-love or self-nurture or self-care. I was always giving out, and I was doing a load of energy to look after everyone else in the business and my clients, but not giving myself time or space to look after myself.
You were in the situation and you went to the doctors and then they told you this news about what you had. Like, what was your immediate reaction to that?
Well, I was originally discovered that I had a brain tumour when I was in Thailand, and I'd been told when I was in the UK that I just had a sinus infection or eye strain, so I had some antibiotics and I got some new glasses, and then I went off travelling, and it wasn't till I was in Thailand that I ended up ultimately had these migraines progressed and progressed and progressed to the point where I ended up at hospital, and I said to them, I've got a sinus infection, and they took me in for a CT scan, and I came out and they said, you don't have a sinus infection, you've got a problem in your brain. And it was just a cold wall of shock hit me. It didn't sound good. The worst thing anyone could have ever told me. I was on my own in a foreign country and there was no way of flying me home.
So what happened next? Like, so you obviously found out about this news, and did you already know about some kind of alternative routes, or was that like a sort of triggering point for you to discover more? But were you aware that you had some alternatives available to you?
I think I had a really strong meditation practice, and I'd also been working with Tantra and tantric energy in my own body for the last 6 years. So that always worked on breath and consciousness and staying really present in the moment. So I recognised that the fear that was going on was always the fear of the unknown or fear of something happening in the future. Whereas when I tuned into my body and what was going on in that exact moment, I was feeling okay. I still had a bit of a headache and I was still about to have brain surgery, but ultimately, physically, I felt okay. So I just had to really rely on the authority and the wisdom that my body was telling me. As soon as I started taking the fear into my system, I could feel my shoulders hunch, my gut wrench, my jaw tense, and that isn't a good place to start off with if you're trying to heal. I knew I just had to let that go. And I had different techniques I'd used before, again with meditation and breath work, or tapping, which is EFT, where you tap acupressure points and you can just release fear.
Tell me a little bit more. What happened next?
So I was in Thailand and I had brain surgery, and then I was out there for a further 3 weeks. The brain surgery was fine. They got all of the tumour out. But what they don't tell you about brain surgery is it takes a long, long time to recover. So I couldn't see very well. Everything was too bright, too loud. Everything was too fast. I couldn't walk. It took quite a long time to learn how to walk again. So from being a really fierce, independent businesswoman, I was suddenly totally bedridden and having to depend on everyone else to look after me, which really wasn't natural for me. I knew I couldn't push my own healing. So for those 3 weeks, all I could do was practice my breath work, because my lungs had collapsed by this point. I was down to 30% breath. So everything that had been so easy for me suddenly was a real chore. Breathing suddenly became a real chore. So that's all I could focus on, because it was exhausting just to breathe. And that brought me straight back to my meditation practice. And it just gave me a real sense of clarity. And because I was on my own as well, I was getting messages on my phone that I couldn't even really read, and I couldn't speak to people on the phone because I couldn't really hear. So it totally isolated me from anyone else's fear and panic. People were going crazy that I was over the other side of the world going through this on my own, and people couldn't help me, and they were figuring out, even though I hadn't told them it was cancer, people were figuring it out for themselves. And I was just totally distanced from that situation. All I could do was focus on what was happening in my body. And even though there was bits of pain, there was something deep in my core that was going, you're okay.
So tell me, where are you now?
It took me 7 months. I had terminal cancer and then clear scans, and I've been cancer-free for just about a year.
Amazing. What did you do between those points of hearing that news to where you are now?
There's the massive campaigns around cancer being something to fight or to beat or an enemy. I didn't really connect with that energy. I was too tired. I was like, no, I don't want to beat cancer, actually. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to love cancer out of my system. I'm going to do the complete opposite, because fighting cancer with anger and hate, it doesn't seem to work. But that's where we plough all our money and our energy into with cancer these days and cancer charities. So I just wanted to kind of smother cancer with so much love that there was no more space in my body to create a toxic environment.
And that's a great point. Like, I hear this all the time. The language that people use, I'm going to beat this thing. And immediately that very language, it's got this kind of anxiety behind it. It doesn't contribute towards the healing process, which is ultimately what is naturally what our body wants to do, right? It wants to live.
Cancerous cells are still cells that are in our body. They are still part of us. They're just mutated somehow. And so I was like, okay, actually this is still a part of my body. So I'm just going to love it as hard as I can. I put a big video out on Facebook telling everyone this is the situation, but I'm going to be okay, because I wanted to manage other people's responses, because what I didn't want was other people's fear creeping in. And the response I got from that was overwhelming. It was shared all over the place, and even strangers were sending me cards, and mystery gifts turned up. Brilliant. And loads of messages of love. It was really, really beautiful. And that's what kind of kept my determination going.
Yes.
Because I couldn't have kept going without this love being thrown at me. I had to make sure that all of my decisions were about me and my health. That was quite controversial to some people. People weren't really sure about how I was overcoming cancer, because I didn't look like other cancer patients. I wasn't behaving in the way that other cancer patients behave.
So let me ask you a question about that, because I've had people in my family who have developed cancer, and I know from a person that loves them a reaction that has in the person, and it actually comes from a place of like totally loving them and wanting to support them. However, I also realise that it's like this kind of heaviness of being a burden to them instead of actually being a true support in them wanting to heal. So how does a person, from your perspective now, and for everyone out there, say a relative has developed it, how should they then treat that person, or how should they then support them in a way that's contributory?
So cancer's a completely personal journey, and so many people go down so many different avenues, and I think the important thing is to try and support the cancer patient in whatever choice they make. Actually, that's the really important thing, not making people wrong, because actually anything else is going to, again, bring fear and anxiety into the body.
And so what did you do with those people that have been like, oh, you need to do this? How did you approach that?
Well, loads of people were really helpful. I was sent loads of articles and interviews and things that I needed for my research. But I did get lots of people say to me, if I had cancer, I know I would never have chemotherapy. And that just wasn't helpful for me. When you get a cancer diagnosis, I don't think anyone will ever understand it until you have. The fear that takes over your body, the shock you go into, you see your whole life that was planned out in front of you totally changing and drop away. So it's just how you word things and how sensitive you are with people. So for me, I went through a process of detoxing my life. First of all, it started with food. I went all organic. I had a vegan alkaline diet, no sugars, no gluten, and no meat and no dairy. And that was really great for me, because instantly I was starting to feel good. My body was just saying yes to the food that I was putting into my system. Then also another form of detoxing was looking at my household and what kind of toiletries and products I had. So I cleared my cupboards. I wouldn't have any bleach or any toxic shower gels or anything. So everything natural and organic. And then I wanted to look at how I could take toxins out of my system. So detoxing. So I did coffee enemas, and I did Epsom baths, pulling toxins out of my system 2 or 3 times a week. Also sweating through exercise or saunas. Then I also looked at what else I take into my system on a day-to-day basis, because it's not just our food, it is our environment around us.
Sure.
And I think words have a massive energy. So I was really careful about who I was speaking to on a regular basis, because I didn't want to take in any anxiety that's out there. I had to really put my boundaries up as to what I wanted to let in.
That education of going through that detoxing process, beyond cancer, what has that educated you in terms of what's really good for the human body, what contributes towards us really increasing our level of energy and just supporting our body the best we possibly can?
I think there's one massive thing I learned actually in cancer, and that is you always have choice. And choice for me was, what people do I choose to have around me? What am I choosing to watch on YouTube? What am I choosing to put into my body with food, for example? I realised that with eating, I was unconsciously just eating and not really being aware of what my food was, where it came from and what it was doing to my system. Okay, now I can make really empowered choices. And I think that's massively important.
So it's almost like you're tuning in to every time there's a kind of feeling that's off. What was the trigger point?
Our body sends really, really subtle signals to us, but we're not used to those. We don't hear them on a regular basis until we get to the point of illness or ill health, where it's gone to the extreme, and then we have to start listening to our system. Cancer gave me that moment of dropping in and going, right, okay, all there is right now to listen to is my body.
And so you went through that detoxing process. What happened at the doctors after? Like, you had the brain surgery, you came back to the UK, you did the detoxing. Tell me about some of the changes that happened over that period of time and what was the response from the doctors?
First of all, when I finally met my oncologist and my dermatologist and a respiratory department, they couldn't really believe that I was as unwell as the files were telling me, because I always presented as well. So I always made sure that I was feeling full power and that I was dressed as if I was healing. So I turned up to all of my appointments in great frocks and amazing shoes, and the nurses would often laugh at me. When I asked about where the wards were, they were like, you do know that's the chemo ward, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I'm a patient. And so after I went back and finally got the results, which were clear scans, they just couldn't believe it. They said the best we expected was that you would be stable 6 months after treatment, and 7 months after treatment everything was gone completely. This is an exceptional case. He said, you're doing better than the rest. I don't know who the rest are, but I think he meant anyone else who has had immunotherapy. The other doctors said to me, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. And that was really important, because some of the younger doctors were like, oh yeah, you're lucky. But the older doctors have been around a bit and seen these cases more and more, but just like, tell me what you did. And when I talked to them about the nutrition and the detoxing, they could completely understand that. But when I talked to them about meditation and tuning into my body's wisdom and believing and manifesting through putting myself into absolute mindset of attracting health, they just glazed over.
There's this kind of thing about demonising the medical profession a little bit. But actually, I think in many ways, if there is this much more of a collaboration in the journey, because they play a part in that, I think the point that I'd like to get across is that they don't necessarily have to be the ones that dictate to us a choice that we must go a certain route. They're just someone who's like you or me. They're a human being. They've got certain experience and knowledge behind them to make certain decisions from that education, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the thing that that person must do. There's choices.
Well, I always said to my doctors, it's okay, we've got this, we're working together on this. And they didn't even really know what I meant by that actually half the time. So it's okay, we've got this. And I was just kind of using them as a source of information. They've got a load of knowledge about bodies. What can you tell me? What can you offer me that's going to be of use to me? They have a good overview of what's going on, and they have loads of information that I can then use to further my research. I believe that a holistic approach is needed, and that includes, for me anyway, looking at how modern medicine can aid our healing. So I wanted to make sure that I was asking all the questions. I made sure I knew all the information to kind of figure out what my body was going through. And also so that I could see the developments in my system. However small, tiny bits of progress, I wanted to hang on to that. So, okay, today I can breathe a little bit better. Oh, today they're taking that machine away, or they're removing this lead. What does that mean? Something's improving.
There's an important point I'd like to get this across, because actually part of me thinks that actually acknowledging the reality is part of, okay, this is just how I am right now, but I can now choose to be something else.
I know through my cancer time there was fear. It was a beautiful, amazing year for me, but there was definitely moments of fear. I would just sit with that and go, yeah, okay, this fear, where does that come from? Bring consciousness to it, breathe through it, and often it would just shift, sometimes really quite quickly. I would go through quite overwhelming sobbing to be like, oh, that's gone, I feel lighter. And just allow yourself not to kind of wallow in something. There's definitely times to appreciate what you're going through and just tune into what that is.
To allow yourself to feel it and then just
allow yourself
go
to feel
through
it, go through it, but then release it when it's time. And you might have to make it bigger. If it's hanging out in this fear for days and days and days, it's kind of almost like you're suppressing it, whereas making it bigger, almost like having a teenage strop about it, just shifts it really quickly.
I remember hearing there was a lady in Australia. She had a big following on Instagram because she basically followed a process, and she was doing the detoxing, and she had cancer, and then the doctors said that she was doing great, and she kept on reporting it. The whole media reported she didn't make it in the end. Mm-hmm. What I've discovered was that her mum was very supportive towards her, and then her mum developed cancer and she followed the same treatment, and then she passed away. And so naturally she just like went into shock and sadness and just went downhill rapidly from that point. What kind of had that happen or go down not so well?
From my research, shock is a massive factor, and often when one partner dies, for example in old age, the next partner follows. And shock, it creates a massive drop in your immune system. So what we kind of need to do is, when we're in that really vulnerable state, is just to really up our self-love and to really look after ourselves, because we are more vulnerable to toxins and to our environment because our system has dropped. 2 years prior to my cancer diagnosis, I'd had a big heartbreak. That was definitely a shock. There was a shock going through my system like I'd never experienced before. And I think that was kind of what dropped my system.
From your perspective, why veganism? Why is that important in kind of like a healing journey?
2 reasons. One is all of our plant-based products are mostly alkaline. So again, creating that alkaline pH level in your system, which is supposedly the best for optimal health, because acidity again creates stress, drops your immune system. And also things like meat and dairy are packed full of animal medicines that again are a toxin that we don't want to put into our system. But the second reason for me was, what veganism taught me again was choice. I was making really conscious decisions about what I was putting into my body, and then I was able to feel how good my body felt. Back when I was a meat eater, I actually never knew my system could feel this good. And as soon as you start tuning into what's good for you, I don't want to go back. Now, every now and then, I might have a bit of gluten in something, but I can really feel my body drop, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want to do that again.
I think a big part of what's missing right now is that a lot more people are becoming conscious of this now, or conscious of alternative medicine and the importance of like taking on your nutrition and things like that. What my sense is that there's still this kind of lack of support for people who are on this journey, and there's a lot of support to go towards the medical interventions. What there isn't is there's not a lot of support on the alternative routes. Where do they start? What would be your advice?
When it first happened and I first made this decision, that there was a massive sense of overwhelm. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been vegan. I don't even know what I'm cooking anymore. It was huge for me. Now when I'm mentoring people who are going through a cancer journey, they say that I don't want to make it worse. So my first thing is, okay, you need to drop the fear that that's ever going to happen. When people are starting off, I think the really important thing is to be conscious about the people you have around you. Make sure that those people know what you need. I don't want you turning up with cake, actually, because I'm giving up sugar, but I do want you to help me research nutrition, for example, and get people on your team, because if people don't understand what you're doing, then they're more likely going to think that you're in denial or that you're going through a cuckoo route to healing. When I put my video out on Facebook asking for help and asking for people to believe in me, I got sent loads of information. So I started ploughing through it, or getting my friends to work through it with me, because it was quite a lot. And then I was able to make my own choices in which route I went down. Always ask yourself, is it right? I just listen to my body, and if it's not right for me, I'd do something else instead.
Jem, thank you so much for your contribution.
Cheers,
and I've really enjoyed listening to your story, and thank you for sharing it. Imagine Radiance is a show that's all about empowering people to make really great choices when it comes to their long-term health and it's also to provide you with choices that you may not have been aware of that really contribute to your health long term, and to give you options, to give you education, to inspire you, to excite you. And if any of these videos resonate with you, I really invite you to share them. Please comment, please like, and just share the love and really enjoy it, and also give us some feedback. Like if you have specific feedback or topics that you want us to cover, then we are really open to doing that. Or maybe you have something to contribute, please reach out, and we're ready to hear all feedback, all contributions, and we're here for you. So thanks so much for listening to our videos. This is Ben Nash, over and out.